Hello and welcome to your fourth weekly walkthrough with me, the kid, here at Red Gaming Tech. I'm going to be trying a slightly new format this week. Essentially, I've been doing kind of a top five kind of setup the last 3 weeks, and I've kind of had some feedback, and I'm not sure that format is really working, and I can't really find five things to fill 10 minutes with this week. It's been kind of a like a drip feed of news this week, and there hasn't been anything that I can really get into. So what I'm going to do is I've kind of compiled um, just kind of a selection of news articles from this week. So I'm going to talk about the ones that, as I scan over, kind of I think I have something to say on, and then through the magic of editing, I'm going to bring you hopefully something, it's trying a different format. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, this show is still kind of in its infancy, but so we'll try a new format. I'll edit it up, and hopefully it'll be a bit more entertaining for you to listen to. In the last, well, as I said, in the last week, it's been a slow news week, really. There's been some kind of interesting stuff, but nothing you can really fill 15 minutes with. So let's take a look. So Xbox is going to be switching over from Microsoft points to real currency late this year, according to Microsoft. This I see as generally a good move. The problem with, it's the original idea behind the point system. I'm guessing was some kind of tax deal where technically people aren't spending money, they're spending points, and it means they can, they can make things cost the same in different territories because you're not spending this X amount of dollars or X amount of pounds, you're spending this many points, and I think it just makes it easier in terms of tax and exchange rates and things like that. But on the flip side, it's a right faff because you've got to put your card details in anyway, and then you have to go through this extra step where you have to buy the points and then spend the points. And other issue is spending points doesn't feel like spending money. So it's easy to get carried away and kind of spend more than you were planning. Sony with PSN have been real world currency from the beginning. And I think it's probably a wise move for Xbox to do the same, just for everyone's sake, because it makes the whole process so much more simple and you get a better understanding of the actual cost and value of what you're buying. So a new trailer for Pokemon X and Y this week kind of showed a new game mechanic called Mega Evolution, which essentially is kind of a different form of evolution. So, I mean, obviously Pokemon evolve, like this Pokemon evolves into this Pokemon, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of a new type of evolution where, some Pokemon can get aesthetic changes and get extra stat boosts on top of the regular level up. So essentially it adds a kind of level of randomness, because in terms of how the game works, excluding kind of buffs and things you give to the Pokemon, it adds a sense of randomness. So two Pokemon at the same level won't necessarily have the same attributes, which is kind of cool because it's kind of predictable beforehand. Whereas if you have a level 60 Charizard, you actually can't have a level 60 Charizard, can you? Or can you? I don't actually know. That's something for me to research. Say you had a level 60 Charizard. Well, we'll go with Charizard. Versus another level 60 Charizard. You know it's going to be an even match pretty much straight down the line, presuming nobody's buffed their Pokemon or whatever. So I like the idea that it adds in kind of aesthetic changes to the Pokemon and, adds a sense of randomness so that, you could get really lucky with a Pokemon that gains higher stats from leveling up than another. So, adds a sense of randomness to the game, bit of a new level of kind of diversity, I guess is the word. For Pokemon players, that's going to be quite fun to play with, I'd imagine. So for those of you in the UK, like myself and Amata and Crimson, I've got his name there for a sec, anyone wanting to pre-order a PS4, you need to get in quick because there is now a pre-order limit in effect in the UK across pretty much all retailers. Essentially, this kind of reminds me of when the PS2 was just coming out. Most stores way over pre-ordered, and it was nigh impossible for pretty much a month after launch to get hold of one in the UK because stores were still fulfilling pre-orders. So I think kind of to avoid that, retailers have gotten wise and basically stopped taking pre-orders so they don't pre-order more than they can guarantee on launch day. So basically each company, I don't know if this has been instigated by Sony or the stores, but essentially each company has an allocation of units, and once they've reached that limit, they can't they can't place any more pre-orders for consoles, which is a good thing. Which in that everyone who does pre-order will be guaranteed a console. Kind of a bad thing in that people who are still humming and hawing may not be able to get a pre-order and therefore will not be able to get a console very easily at all for a little while after the initial release. Because consoles are always understocked at release. It was like that with the PS2, it was like that with 360, it was like that, well, it wasn't like that with PS3, but I think we all know why. £600. But you know, a DS especially, and Wii. I mean, I worked in a game store when the Wii came out, and it was a nightmare. Like we'd get 10 Wiis in for the day, and we'd already have like 100-person waiting list. So we were constantly working through this never-ending waiting list, trying to get people these Wiis, and we just couldn't get them fast enough. And these weren't pre-orders; these were walk-ins. Like we had to take, we had to start a waiting list for walk-ins, and they would come in every day. Check what position they were in the list, and then as it was counting down to Christmas, people were getting more and more desperate, and it all just turned into a nightmare. I won't be working for that company again. So Deep Silver have teased at the possibility of Dead Island 3. How they've gone from Dead Island to Dead Island... well, you have Dead Island Riptide, but I thought that was more of an expansion than like Dead Island 2. But anyway, yeah, so they've kind of hinted at the possibility of Dead Island 3. Essentially, what's happened is that in a Reddit Q&A, somebody asked the creative director at Deep Silver if there would be a Dead... I'm kind of conscious that I may have said Dead Rising a few times in there. I'm talking about Dead Island. Basically asked if there would be a Dead Island 3, and his response was, I would not expect the series to stop at this point. You know, as to whether there'd be a lot of hype for a third entry, Dead Island 1 was a disappointment for a lot of people based solely on how incredible the trailer was versus the actual product. I think was a massive letdown for people. Dead Island Riptide, I don't think I know anyone who played it. I certainly didn't. I was pretty let down by Dead Island. I didn't play Riptide, just didn't have any desire to. Unless they made significant changes to the formula and the overall setup and the kind of mood of the game, I'm not sure I'd really be interested in playing Dead Island 3. So really, in terms of that, I'd wait for news on what changes they're going to make. If they're just sticking to the same format, it's really not going to interest me. But I'll give them another chance, wait and see what they have to bring to the series. But I'm just looking here, and it says Dead Island Riptide topped the UK chart for 3 weeks. That was not my experience of it, and I was working in retail when that game was out, and it was not the best seller for any of those 3 weeks in our stores. I don't know where people were buying it, but I'm kind of loath to believe that, actually. So Microsoft have come out and said that unlike with kind of past console generations, like when the Xbox 360 came out, most support for the original Xbox kind of fell away from Microsoft. Same, Sony kind of supported the PS2 for quite a while after the PS3 release, but then they since phased it out. Microsoft have essentially come out and said that they are going to continue. Well, they're going to commit, they've said, to continuing support for the 360. I'm hoping this means keeping servers for dedicated servers for games open, keeping DLC available for re-download if you've already bought it. Things like that, so people just suddenly don't just lose access to all this content as soon as the Xbox One's out. I think it would be a big mistake to suddenly cut off a lot of dedicated servers, especially things like Halo and Call of Duty. To make those suddenly unplayable online would be a big mistake. And especially since it's likely, some of those games will get like re-releases on Xbox One. I guarantee they'll do some kind of Halo bundle and some kind of Call of Duty collection or whatever. It's pretty much a given that it will happen at some point. So cutting off multiplayer support for those games would probably be a bad idea. Also, I think Microsoft know that with the current kind of economy, not everyone's going to be quick on the uptake for the Xbox One, especially given the bad press they had around the announcement. So I think they will be expecting that a lot of people will be sticking with the 360 for a fair while, even after the Xbox One's out, just to kind of test the water, and also just to save up the money, because the thing's expensive. It's £399, I think, and like 300. It's a few hundred of whatever your currency is. So yeah, the user base I think will remain strong for a good, I'd say, few years after the Xbox One launch. So I think it's probably a good decision from Microsoft to keep that support there, because people aren't going to be happy if their console that they have is suddenly cut off and can't go online anymore, or can't play games, and they lose all their DLC that they previously downloaded, lose all their what do they call it, arcade titles that they've paid for. People wouldn't like that, and I think it would be a bad move to cut that off until the Xbox One. I'd say wait until the Xbox One has a significantly larger install base than the 360 before you think about shutting down servers. So a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played The Last of Us. That's going to be your one warning. If you haven't finished The Last of Us, don't listen to this bit, but listen to the rest or something if you can do that. Well, actually, it won't be spoilers, because I'm not going to actually say what happens at the end of The Last of Us. But essentially, the writer of the game, what's his name? The creative director, Neil Druckmann, essentially said that the original ending to the game was intended to be quite different to what happens in the actual game. So basically, what was initially going to happen, let's see. Yeah, so essentially the original story had Tess, of his female partner in the early stages of the game. The original ending was to have Tess come back for revenge on Joel for something, and then there's some concept art which they put out of her torturing him. I mean, obviously this story's been changed significantly from this point, but that ending really doesn't work in terms of this the actual storyline in the game. So I'm guessing the story would have taken a very different turn. I mean, obviously, spoiler alert, Tess does die quite early in the game. So, it was obviously a very different story arc back then. Not sure I would have liked that ending. I thought the actual ending in the game was absolutely perfect in every single way, and I won't let anyone tell me otherwise. So I'm obviously going to reject any other alternative ending. But I don't know, that just seems especially kind of lame to me, having her come back and get revenge on Joel. It just seems a bit meh. But yeah, anyway, it's kind of cool to know that it went through that degree of a change in terms of the storyline. But there's a little tidbit anyway. So a bit more news on the Bioshock Infinite DLC, Buried at Sea. The player will have the ability. I'm not sure whether for the entirety of the DLC, but at least at some points, at the very least in the game, the player will be able to take control of Elizabeth. And the developers have said that Elizabeth's gameplay style will be significantly different to Booker's, which is kind of cool. I'd like to mess with the whole space-time manipulation thing. You could do some cool stuff. What kind of stuff does she do? She throws things around a lot, and she opens tears. But it'd be cool to mess with that mechanic. Get kind of a portal type thing going. That could be awesome. But yeah, that's got me even more excited to play it now. Just wish they'd tell us when it's coming out. It's set in Rapture on New Year's Eve 1958, which is the evening the revolution began, which is, I think I touched on that last week. Just I was saying I'd like it to be set at that time. So even more psyched now. Are they going to give us a release date? They've given us a price. It'd be 1,200 Microsoft points, or £9.99. No release date. So here's a bit of a bummer for people who are looking forward to Arma 3, like myself. I actually pre-ordered it, and I pre-purchased it, I guess, to get access to the alpha, which has been kind of a very protracted alpha. And now they've come out and said that the campaign mode won't be available for the game's release, which means that initially the game will be multiplayer only, which is an unconventional way of doing things. I mean, the Arma games, I guess, have always largely, the single-player experience has always been a large part of it. So kind of to release it without that seems kind of odd, but if it means we get access to the full multiplayer and don't have to wait the extra time for the campaign, I'm okay with that. But the alpha's already been going on way longer than they said it would, and now the campaign mode's being held back. Kind of thinking I'm kind of glad I pre-purchased and got it considerably cheaper than the final game's going to cost, because I'm starting to feel a little bit ripped off. But I'm still absolutely excited for that game as hell. The alpha's very, very limited. Like, there's only a couple of different weapons and vehicles for you to play with. People have already started making custom missions, but with the limited assets you have to work with, they're all pretty basic and of a muchness. But just as an overall idea of how the game's going to feel, yeah, I'm pretty impressed. It gives you an idea of the swimming mechanics, how the control for the vehicle is going to feel, how the improved sound for the weapons, just general kind of tweaks and overhauls that make the game feel a lot smoother and less like you're a parasite in the back of someone's head, kind of puppeteering them around. So yeah, it's kind of cool that they're not delaying it again, and we're just but it still kind of sucks that we're getting half the game for now. Considering I always loved the campaign in those games, like Arma 2 campaign, I must have played through 20 times. That was an awesome campaign. I don't think that it gets enough recognition for its campaign. So, guess we'll have to wait for the single player on that one. But, yeah, at least we get multiplayer. Well, I say earlier than whenever they're going to release single player. It's something, and it's not something at the same time. So yeah, I mean, the last thing really this week that kind of took notice, that caught my eye, whatever you want to say. Last one for this week is a new 17-minute long DayZ standalone dev diary. It's kind of giving us an idea of some, new features of the game. Like, they've kind of completely redone the HUD and the inventory management system, because the one in Arma 2 really doesn't lend itself to that type of game and is clunky and buggy as hell. So they've kind of done a custom interface for all that, which is pretty cool. They've massively improved the zombie AI and pathfinding. Anyone who's played DayZ, the mod, knows that the zombies have a tendency to kind of rubber band all over the place, run into walls, attack you through walls, get stuck in corners, and just generally not pose a threat. Like, you can run and hide in a pine tree and they won't be able to reach you because they can't go into bushes. And there's just a lot of exploits that make them really not that threatening, and probably the only threat in that game is really the other players. So it's probably a good thing that they've done some work on the zombie AI and pathfinding and things like that. They've also added new weapons, added the ability for you to change. I mean, there was limited clothes changing in the mod, but it's more in-depth now, and there's more variety in terms of clothes. Most of the core mechanics they've kept the same, but just with general kind of overall improvements. You can take I hope that doesn't come through. My Avast is updated, apparently. Don't know if you'll be able... Actually, of course you won't be able to hear it. It didn't come through the speakers. Anyway, I'm rambling now. But yeah, they've... it's too much for me to cover in kind of a short video. But if you just do a Google search for DayZ latest dev diary, you'll find that 17-minute video, which will give you more of an in-depth look at the kind of overhauls and stuff. Because there's a lot of tweaks and things that they've done that if I were to list them all, it would take forever. Still no release date, though. This seems to be the story of my life recently with releases for things. Nobody's giving release dates. Why are we being kept in the dark on everything? But yeah, DayZ Standalone is a thing, and they have a 17-minute video on it, so check it out. I'm excited. Are you? Really, that's all this. Good God, that was terrible. So really, that's all that's kind of piqued my interest this week. Kind of a slow week, in terms of stuff that I can really get excited about. But, it's been cool to just, scan over with you guys, have a chat, point out some things. But yeah, so those are kind of, I guess, my picks for this week. So I will be back next week with weekly walkthrough number 5, right here at Red Gaming Tech, with your host, me, the Kid. See you next week. Peace out.